It's much cleaner. We like hearing those voices, those melodies, the individual lines interwoven like that. We like hearing everything resolve itself. Welcome back to another piano lesson. Whether you've seen the other video or this is the first one, whether you have piano experience or not at all, either way, I think this video is going to give you a couple tools that you can try out to play just about any pop song, just about any song you'd like to give a try. Maybe you've heard on the radio or Spotify and you want to see if you can work on it on the piano. If you've got a piano, now's a great time to move to a piano. You could bring your phone with you, set it on the piano in front of you. The first thing I want to demonstrate, is building these basic chords. If you have seen the last video, we talked about finger numbers. If you haven't, it's as simple as your thumb is 1, your little finger's 5, and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as you go. Now, if you find a spot on the piano like here, right in the middle, say, and you play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just like I have, all the keys right next to each other, but you lift finger numbers 2 and 4, just like the last video. That's how you end up with your chord, right? Now, you can hold that shape, and you can use the exact same pattern up and down the piano. This is the same stuff that I talked about the last time. Now, let's put it into practice when it comes to pop music a little bit more. We've only talked about using the right hand. Let's talk about implementing the left hand too. It depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to play the melody with the right hand and accompany with your left hand, it's going to be a totally different setup than, for example, if you're trying to sing along to your own piano playing. Let's say you want to play the melody with your right hand, and you play the chords with your left hand. A good example is Hallelujah, Rufus Wainwright. You can play a chord with your left hand, and change the melody with your right hand. That's a little bit more complicated in the sense that you have to do independent things with both hands at the same time, but it's not as complicated in the sense that if you're just singing along, your hands are only responsible for the chords, that the chords can be a little bit more varied, that you can try more, well, yeah, variation. Let's say, for example, you're playing the C chord right here. Use your left hand and play bass. Now, when I say C chord, the name of the chord is the bass note we're usually going to play. So if you're playing a C chord, play a C in the bass. If you're playing an F chord, try playing an F in the bass. G chord, A chord. Now, you may have noticed that the chords that I played are in slightly different shapes than what I showed you earlier. Let me show you what it sounds like if you play all the chords just like I did right at the beginning using this same shape, right? You've got C, F, G, A. This brings me to the next point, which is inverting these chords. If you don't want to play this chord, for example, a C chord, right next to each other, all 3 notes, you could, for example, take this C, it's marked on this tiny piano, this C, and you could play it here instead. You see, they're both marked C, which means I'm using the exact same note names. I'm just inverting the chord. I'm rearranging it. I could do the same thing with this E. I could play it here instead. That's a different inversion. Now you'll notice I do that one more time. Then I'm back to where I started, just an octave higher. At a different spot on the piano. Right, so now, let's say we tried some of that out with the chords we've already used. We've used C quite a bit, F, G, and A. We'll start with A. If you take A, let's say you play this E down here instead, do the same with the C, suddenly these 2 chords, C and A, are really close to each other, and that's exactly what we want to go for. I'm still playing the name of the chord with the bass, but the arrangement of the chord, that inversion, is slightly different. Look at F, for example. If I don't want to play this C on top, I could play it underneath, And now that's really close to our other two chords, C, A, and then F. Let's try that with the bass. C, A, F, and last but not least, if we look at this G chord, we could take this G, play it up an octave. We've kept all four of our chords within the same region of the piano. Together it sounds like this. It's much cleaner. We like hearing those voices, those melodies, the individual lines interwoven like that. We like hearing everything resolve itself. Now the last thing I'd suggest is some variation. Let's say instead of playing all the notes at the same time, you want to try some variation. The first perhaps most simple form of variation is switching between your left hand and your right hand. So you start with your left, right, right, left, right, right, right. You get the idea? Doesn't have to be 4 beats, it could be like a waltz. Or, if you wanted it to be slightly more complicated, you could do variation within the right hand itself. Instead of the notes at the same time, for example, you could play Let's invert it. Let's start at the top and go down. And last but not least, if you wanted something more complicated, maybe middle, top, bottom, top, middle, top. And last but not least, if we wanted to do that initial idea we had, left hand first, followed by the right hand, and then implement some independence in the right hand. So now you've learned that basic chord shape, you've learned hopefully how to invert the chords, and you've got a few ideas of how you can vary those chords and either try composing your own songs or try playing along with chords in a song in your own style.